The call came on a Tuesday. It was raining outside, like it always seemed to when something awful happened. Mia was in her car, a half-eaten protein bar in her lap, already late for work. The voice on the other end belonged to her doctor, calm but loaded with the kind of stillness that precedes an earthquake. Stage 2. Aggressive. We'll need to start treatment immediately. Mia didn't cry. Not at first. She nodded, asked practical questions. How long? What kind of chemo? Will I lose my hair? But her voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. It wasn't until she hung up and sat in that car with the windshield wipers dragging like a metronome of dread that she let the sobs come. She told herself she'd work through it. She was tough. Hadn't she fought to climb to where she was? Director of product design at a tech firm that still smelled like espresso and ambition. She had made it. She couldn't afford to stop. But life doesn't wait for anyone to be ready. 2 weeks into treatment, her body crashed harder than she ever expected. Nosebleeds, nausea, migraines so bad she couldn't look at a screen. One morning, she passed out in the office bathroom, curled next to the toilet like a broken question mark. HR called it a safety risk and placed her on indefinite suspension. Without pay. Just like that, everything she'd bled for, every 3 a.m. project sprint, every birthday missed for meetings, every anxious glance at her phone during dinner, was gone. Her identity had been woven into her job. Now it all unraveled in the span of 2 weeks. Mia felt humiliated and angry, but mostly she was terrified. The kind of fear that doesn't scream, just whispers constantly in the back of your head, "You're not coming back from this." She isolated. She stopped answering texts, dodged her mother's calls. She hated the way people looked at her, too soft, too pitying, like she was already halfway gone. Even her mirror seemed apologetic. At night, she'd lie on the couch wrapped in a hoodie 3 sizes too big, scrolling mindlessly. Sometimes she'd land on TED Talks or Instagram reels of people finding purpose through pain, and she'd snort in disbelief. It all felt so rehearsed, so curated. That wasn't her reality. Her reality was raw, vomiting into a trash bin, staring at a bank account dipping below zero, and wondering if she had ever actually mattered at all. But somewhere inside that despair, a strange question started gnawing at her. If this isn't the end, what would the beginning even look like? She didn't have the answer yet. But something was waking up. Mia's breakthrough didn't come with a sunrise or some divine revelation. It came during a panic attack in a grocery store. She had gone in to buy toothpaste and oranges. That's it. But the bright lights and crowded aisles ambushed her. The shelves blurred, the noise grew teeth, and her lungs rebelled. She dropped everything and fled to her car, gasping for air, the steering wheel slick under her fingers. After it passed, she just sat there, angry at herself, ashamed. But beneath it, something shifted. "This isn't who I am," she muttered, the words landing heavier than she expected. Not like a plea, like a fact. That night, she opened her laptop. Not to check work emails, those had long stopped, but to type. She didn't know what she was doing at first. But the words came, raw, ugly, honest. She wrote about the diagnosis, the bathroom floor, the shame of losing her job. She wrote like no one would ever read it. Because no one was supposed to, except someone did. She posted it to a small online forum for women navigating chronic illness. It was just a rant, she thought. A purge. But within a day, responses flooded in. Not likes. Letters. Real stories from real people who whispered, "Me too." And for the first time in months, Mia felt less alone. So she kept writing. Every night, like a ritual. Not polished essays or faux inspirational fluff. Just truth, messy, brutal, sometimes hilarious. The posts grew legs. They spread. Comments turned to DMs. Women asked if she could host a Zoom support group. She said yes, though her voice trembled the whole first call. She was terrified of being seen, still sick, still unemployed, still scared. But every session left her lighter. These women didn't want a guru. They wanted a mirror. And Mia, against all odds, was becoming one. She began reading again, too, not just for escape, but for tools. Psychology, trauma, resilience. She took free online courses in facilitation, reached out to a retired therapist she admired online, and offered to intern, unpaid, remotely, just to learn. To her shock, the woman agreed. Mia built a website. She called it Rewired, a space for people rebuilding their identity after health, life, or heartbreak yanked the ground out from under them. No affirmations. Just truth, community, and action. She didn't do it because she felt strong. She did it because she was tired of feeling useless. And in creating something for others, she started to find herself again. The woman who once led product meetings in heels now showed up in a hoodie and beanie, bald, pale, but fierce. She wasn't trying to be who she was before. She was becoming someone else entirely. By month 5, Rewired was no longer a side project. It had become a lifeline, not just for Mia, but for thousands. What started as late-night rants in a half-lit room had turned into a platform that hosted weekly live sessions, guest interviews, and journaling prompts. People weren't just visiting. They were staying, sharing, growing. And for once, Mia didn't feel like she was performing. She was showing up real, and people respected her for it. But it wasn't glamorous. Mia was still broke. She lived off savings, a tiny disability check, and donated meals from friends she'd once ghosted. She faced judgment from relatives. You had a great job. Why not go back when you're better? They didn't get that better wasn't a destination anymore. It was a direction. One she was carving every day. She also failed publicly. A live stream glitched mid-session and crashed in front of 400 people. Another time, she broke down crying during a Q&A and had to log off. She thought it would ruin her. Instead, it deepened people's trust. "You're the first person I've seen not pretend," someone wrote afterward. That hit deep. What set Mia apart wasn't inspiration, it was the grit. She shared the things most people edited out: the shame of needing help, the rage at her own body, the guilt of surviving when others didn't. She didn't try to turn pain into poetry. She just told the truth. Eventually, therapists began recommending Rewired to their clients. Nonprofits reached out. A women's health conference invited her to speak. She laughed when she got the email. She hadn't worn makeup in months and still couldn't stand for more than 40 minutes without resting. But she said yes. And that speech, standing behind a podium with a scarf over her bald head, voice shaking but unflinching, changed everything. She didn't sell hope. She sold agency. "You don't have to be cured to be powerful," she said. "You just have to stay in the room." That line got quoted, tweeted, even printed on a few t-shirts. But for Mia, it wasn't about the applause. It was about standing there, terrified, tired, and choosing to speak anyway. Because that's what this new life demanded. Not perfection. Not recovery. But courage again and again, in small, unsexy acts. She was learning to live forward. And she was bringing people with her. It would be easy to say everything got better. That after the conference, doors flew open and checks started arriving. But that wasn't the truth. Not the whole of it. Success didn't come with comfort. It came with friction. People misunderstood her. Critics called her platform a pity project or claimed she was exploiting her illness for clout. Someone anonymously emailed her employer, a job she no longer even had, accusing her of fabricating her diagnosis for attention. The email CC'd former colleagues. Mia cried for hours after that. Not because she believed it, but because a part of her still feared she wasn't enough. That maybe she really was just a sick woman trying to make her pain mean something. But this time, she didn't retreat. She took a day, pulled the curtains, let herself break. Then she logged in and told her followers what had happened. Not for sympathy. just because hiding was no longer an option. Vulnerability had become her weapon, and wielding it felt like defiance. Her community responded like wildfire. Dozens of stories poured in, people falsely accused, dismissed by doctors, shamed for their pain. And Mia realized something. She wasn't just holding space anymore. She was shaping it. So she changed direction. She launched a mentorship circle for women re-entering the workforce post-trauma. Not polished, not corporate, real conversations about shame, fatigue, building confidence when your body still aches and your voice still shakes. She also confronted the part of herself she had ignored the most, the one that resented who she used to be. That was harder than facing any troll. Because the old Mia, the one who thought her job title made her worthy, who judged others for being too emotional, who would have pitted someone like the current her, was still there, buried under layers of grief. Mia wrote her a letter. She didn't burn it or post it. She read it aloud, to herself, with shaking breath. "I'm sorry I abandoned you when you stopped performing. But you're not broken. You just became human." And that's when something inside shifted, not suddenly, but permanently. Mia didn't need to go back. She wasn't trying to reclaim her old life anymore. She was forging something different. Not just for herself. For anyone who had ever been benched, buried, or broken. Freedom, she realized, wasn't being untouched by pain. It was finally not being defined by it. A year after her diagnosis, Mia stood on a stage in New York City. It wasn't a TED stage. It wasn't glamorous. It was a folding chair event at a local community center for young women navigating chronic illness and career loss. But for Mia, it was everything. She wore jeans, a soft blue sweater, and a small pendant with the word "Decide" etched on it, a reminder that survival was never passive. It was a choice made daily, in breath and grit and presence. The room was quiet as she spoke. Not because her story was polished, but because it was real. She didn't pretend to be healed. She still had fatigue. She still had scars, both inside and out. But now, she spoke from a place of integration, not inspiration. "Your value is not tied to your productivity," she said, looking directly at a girl in the second row who hadn't met her eyes all evening. "You do not need to be fixed to be whole." And then, quietly, "You are allowed to rewrite what strength means." The silence after that wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Afterward, people came up, not for selfies, but for hugs, letters, whispers. "You said what I've been too afraid to admit. You made me want to try again. You reminded me I still matter." Mia went home that night and cried, not out of sadness or exhaustion, but something softer. Something like peace. She no longer needed to prove anything. Not to herself. Not to the world. Rewired was now a nonprofit with staff, grants, and global reach. But it wasn't the success that changed her. It was who she had to become to survive the fire. She had become someone who listened better. Who didn't flinch from pain. Who found dignity not in perfection, but in persistence. Who could sit with someone in their dark and say, "I know. I've been there. And we're not staying." And yes, eventually, her old employer called. They offered her a role again. A better one, in fact. She thanked them, sincerely. Then said no. Because the job that once defined her now looked so small next to the life she had built. Mia never asked to be a symbol. But in choosing not to disappear, in daring to rebuild from wreckage, she became one. Not for success. For becoming.